Hey there, all you creepers and reapers. Welcome to another episode of the Femme Fatalities. I'm your co-hostess, Anna, and I'm here with the hostess of Necrosis.
Hey, Grievelings and Frightlings, it's Margaret, and welcome back to another episode. This week, we are summarizing our feelings about a show. We're moving out of the movie realm and we are stepping into TV. Anna, what are we talking about this week?
We're going to be talking about the most recent season of American Horror Story. That's right, the one that features none other than Kim Kardashian, amongst many other players. And I think you'll be interested in what we have to say. So, why don't you go ahead, pull up some Bruja Brew, sit on top of your coffin, and get some delicious little serpent snackies ready, because you're in for a wild ride with us.
Yes, you are. Trigger warnings. Some mild body horror, pregnancy, if you've got any kind of activation around pregnancy,
miscarriage,
tending to a dead animal. I'm guessing there's a term there for her. Baby finding a dead raccoon. Was it a raccoon?
Yeah. There is I can't think of it now, but I'll when we post this cast, I'll add it to our story what the actual term is.
Yeah.
But
demonic things. So there are some. Yeah. So if you have any kind of activation struggle with devil themes, probably not your cup of tea.
Yeah. Also family dynamic.
Huge.
Yeah. And yes. I would say career obsession. Also pressure. So I feel like the entire season really focused on the pressure that a lot of cisgender females feel to have it all. So that's something that triggers you as well.
Witchcraft. If you've got any triggers around witchcraft, but yeah, I feel like you really summed it up. This season was really about the pressure of being a woman, having a career, having a happy family, having a baby, all these pressures.
Absolutely. Well, let's dive right in. What did you think of this season? Start with that.
I really was hopeful for this season. I was really excited for this season. And I thought it started out, and I think you agree, Anna, tell me if you don't, like this was going to be like a female empowered season. Like this would be all about like woman's power. And then towards the end, it kind of just got misogynistic and that really men are still in power. It's about what men want. And then the final episode, I was so disappointed. What did you think?
Yeah, I thought it was kind of, to me, by the time I finished the season, I was like, this is pointless. I did think it was going to be way more empowering. I also thought there was going to be a Coven tie-in, which there was not. Because if we look back at Emma Roberts' character in Coven, she was an actress who was really famous and well-known. I'm like, wouldn't this be great if this was her backstory? Or something was giving, right? But that just didn't happen. And I thought it was extremely disappointing. I think that the writing has changed a lot. I say it all the time. I'm sure I've said it a bunch of times on the cast. I want it to go back to like the Coven days. For me, that was, up until like Coven Hotel, those were like the heydays of the show. And I mean, all the way up to Apocalypse, everything tied in. There was something happening with everything else. And that's what made it great. I did love the 1984 or whatever it was as well, because that was a super fun ride. But to me, this was just lacking. And I think part of it was like so, sensationalized that Kim Kardashian was going to be in it. Okay, cool. Who cares, right? At first I was like, I'm not going to watch it because, they're not going to give her like a part that she can even try to act or whatever. But I will say, like, she did pretty well not being an actress and being in the show. I will give credit where credit's due. But I thought the ending was just ridiculous for me.
Yeah.
It was like,
It was disappointing.
yeah. And I think a lot of it too, I think that, like you said, that this season was geared towards, I would say, women in their 20s, 30s, 40s, and even 50s. And, it's talking about having kids, having family, having a career, having it all these sorts of things. And it was just kind of, I don't know, for me, it was almost frustrating to watch because I felt for Emma Roberts' character. It didn't help that her name was Anna. I'm like, great. Um, but I really did feel for her, just in terms of what she was going through and all these sorts of different things. And, I've had friends, I haven't had any children yet, but I've had friends who have had children, and they did say, sometimes during pregnancy, you do feel not like yourself. You do feel like so different, and just the symptoms kind of take over your body and your mind. And, I think that could have been spoken to in a different way. I almost feel like.
Yes. Thank you for pointing that out, right? Because I was with you. I was like, okay, we're going to like explore pregnancy and, like you said, miscarriage and the grief that happens when we have a miscarriage and how society really doesn't tend to miscarriage grief, because in society, well, it wasn't a baby yet. And yet the woman is grieving her unborn child, the changes that her body is going through, and during pregnancy, how your body cannot feel like your own, and how they illuminated that. And it just felt like they could have had some more depth.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think too, it's important to say that anyone who's listening right now, it is totally normal and important to grieve if you have had a miscarriage, if you have lost a child, whether it was when they were an infant or they were an adult. Child loss is a very serious issue that's not spoken about very much in our society. It's okay if you always wanted children and you don't have them to grieve for the children that you won't have. All of these things are normal, and there are supports and services available to you. And also, no one can tell you how you're supposed to feel about that, because oftentimes not everyone has gone through that sort of experience. If you've had a miscarriage, it's really up to you. You don't have to share that. If you want to share it, you can, and that's absolutely socially acceptable and it's fine, but you don't have to share it, because at the end of the day, it's your prerogative and it's what works for you. What I would encourage you to do is to speak with a counselor, because that's going to be a very safe zone, and it's going to help you with some of the things that you're experiencing and you're going through. This isn't just for, menstruating females. This is for your partner too. Your partner's probably going through a lot of things if you've miscarried or lost a child or are having difficulty getting pregnant, adopting, with in vitro, all these different things. And it's important to be able to come together and find ways to do that and work through it. And hey, if you're single and you're trying IVF and it's not working out or something like that, there are counseling services that are available to you as well.
And I think that, like you touch on and the show touches on, the extents that Anna in American Horror goes through. Like, she wants to have a baby so badly, so she's going to go through in vitro. And the grief that comes with when you want something so desperately and you're putting your body through all of these experiences just to have what it is that you want, and the grief that comes with that, with losing the baby. And we can see with her husband, who doesn't seem all that supportive. And as Anna was touching on, that this is a couple dynamic that often happens. Like, what happens to the relationship when you're trying to have a baby and you lose a baby, and he's just going to go ahead and do his own thing. So we can see him kind of removing himself from her. He has his art career that he is just going to throw himself into so that he doesn't have to deal with how she's changing, her hormones, the grief, all of these things that are happening. So in her grief, we see her collecting a dead raccoon and hiding it in a bassinet in the basement and tending to it because she wants a baby so badly that she's gonna do what she's gonna do.
Exactly. And you know, it's what most people see as abnormal behavior, but it is something that happens. And I mean, there's a whole market of the lifelike baby dolls. I mean, they're there to serve a purpose. They are there to help people. You know, as we kind of journey further into the season, the witchy stuff. Okay, so for me, I've always thought of witches and warlocks as very empowering characters. And I felt like this particular season, to me, they were just very, very opposite of that.
Yes, they were. Yeah, I agree with you. And feels like they really played into the stereotype. And we can say historically, yes, witches were tied to the devil, to Satan. And we could go into why that is, because the society that is colonizing, overtaking the other society, you have to demonize their current beliefs in order to get everybody on board. And it would have just been nice to see them start to push that a little bit, to start to change that, to be like, oh, okay, so witches were based in paganism, which was actually the religion at a time that is nature based. It's not demonic, it's not satanic.
Yeah.
And I don't know, it just felt old. Yeah, we know satanic horror sells. Satanic horror is, or we could say religious horror.
Yeah.
I'm not, that like, okay, it is a genre. It is popular. Let's do something a little different. Because I really wanted to like the witches when we got into their backstory. I was like, oh, I really want to like them. Oh, wait, no, they're just basically here to serve men so men could continue to have their line, their genetic line, their heirs, which just, it took away from the grief of pregnancy, the grief of miscarriage, the relationship stuff. Like, nope, it's still just about men and them continuing their line.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, you know, at the end, when Kim Kardashian's character went into her whole speech, I'm like, oh, wait, is she saying something? And I'm like, oh, well, she's saying something. Not necessarily what I want to hear. And I also thought, too, you know, when Anna like defeats her or whatever, and then it's just this room of light, I'm like, this is completely inconclusive. So you're here, you're happy with your baby, but the world has not changed at all. So this isn't, it's inefficient. It's not doing anything. What I was also hoping once again was it could have tied into Murder House, and it could have been like the next Michael Langdon that she birthed, right? Which would have made more sense. And it turns out that like the entire coven was undercover to rescue her and the baby. You know what I mean? I was like, that could have been really cool. That would have been great. But no.
Your mind works and like connecting them and like look like, hey, this really could have been this. Like, why didn't they go this way? Because it would have made it more rewarding. Than it almost felt like at the end they're like, okay, good triumphs evil. There we go. And it was like,
but it didn't though. That's the whole thing, is because she and the child survived and the coven went away. It's supposed to be this happy ending, but it's not, because she's still faced in the same world. The child is going to live in the same world. There's nothing equivocally that has changed. And that's what really irritated me about this season.
Oh, I agree. And during the last episode, I was like, how is she defeating this
Mm,
centuries old coven? Yes, the witch, the really old witch, helps her. Still, she couldn't defeat the coven. So
mhm,
now with Anna, Anna is so special that she's going to defeat
right.
this coven. I was like, that just,
Yeah.
then anybody could have defeated them if they just believed in good enough.
Right. And the thing is, too, once again, it could have been another tie-in. So we learn that Anna's mom dies when she's little, and then one of the coven members, attaches to her. Once again, perfect tie-in to the coven season. And it just, nothing was done. And I'm like, there were so many opportunities. So I don't know. Anyone who works for American Horror Story or Fox, if you're listening, watch all the seasons if you haven't. Like, I think that's imperative to be educated on what your position. And I'm not saying you're not, but listen to your fans that are still remaining. So many of us want the old American Horror Story back. It's not just Margaret and I saying this. There are so many fans out there that want it back. And there are so many clever ways that things and themes and people and items can be tied back in to really keep the viewers guessing and wondering. And I feel like that fell a little bit flat this season too, just because there are always so many twists and turns throughout the season. And you're like, wait, what? Oh yeah, that is part of like real history. That actually happened. Oh wow, okay. I feel like that didn't really happen. To me, the Mia Farrow thing, I I just think that it wasn't for me, because knowing the history on Mia Farrow and her relationships and children and adopted children and all these different things, I was like, I just, it bothered me probably more than it should have. But I was like, is this really something that I would consider to be appropriate? And to me, the answer is just no. Um, but that's me. I mean, everyone has their own opinion. If you love that storyline, go for it. Great, awesome. But for me, it just didn't jive.
Yeah, it was incomplete. It wasn't doing honor to Mia Farrow. It wasn't, because there was a lot of complexity there. Like,
Mm-hmm.
we know that there's trauma there. We know that there's grief
Mm-hmm.
there. And then it's almost like they just pulled it in, like you were saying, without previous seasons, where if they pulled in something historical, something
Mm-hmm.
from real life, it added to the story. It built
Yeah.
the story. And this was, I know that this season was based on a book. I haven't read the book. A lot of people say it feels like it has ties to Rosemary Baby and
Mm-hmm.
Mia Farrow as well. Rosemary's Baby is also based on a book. So,
Oh yeah.
yeah, I don't know how much those two books tie together, how
Mm-hmm.
they come together, but it just felt like we were missing some
Yeah, like
pieces.
there's a chunk of information that the viewer just didn't have. And I mean, for me, like I love Rosemary's Baby. I think it's great. Normally those type of films aren't really for me. I'm not into it, but I just thought that it was really well done. Um, I can remember being like in middle school or high school and my mom letting me watch it. And she was like, "Oh, there's this scene with steak," and everybody freaked out about it when it came out. And for me, I'm like, "Well, wait, that's how I eat my steak." Um, but just like all of the references too, I thought were really clever. And there's not a lot of horror or gore in the movie, but just the end. When they're like, "Oh, he has his father's eyes." I mean, I just think that's such a great ending to that story, and it's final. You don't really wonder what happens after that, because you're like, oh crap, okay. And it's hard to do that in any sort of movie. So I give a lot of props to the filmmaker, for taking so much of the book and condensing it into a movie.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing about that. Yeah, and wasn't that Roman Polanski too that did?
I'm
Yeah,
sure it was. Yeah, even though I think he and Mia Farrow were like romantically linked at the time.
I think so. And then, yeah, as we're digressing, that could go into again these Hollywood and how American Horror Story still perpetuated. Men are in charge of Hollywood. They are in charge of the what's going to happen. And that was disappointing too, because then here comes Kim Kardashian's character. You're like, yeah, head bitch in charge, boss bitch, all of this. And then to find out that she's just doing this to help some other man's agenda, I was like, it's
a bummer. Yeah. It would have been mildly better if she were like in charge. But not quite there. So, I mean, honestly, and tell me how you feel if she were to be in the next season, but the season be worthwhile. I would be okay with that. And I know that's a very controversial statement. What's your take?
Oh, so many thoughts. Like, I didn't mind her acting. I thought she was pretty good. In cancel culture society, I don't know how much I support her, because her family has come under fire for their excessive wealth and how they flaunt that, and how with genocides happening everywhere that they stay removed. And I get why they stay removed. I don't know how I feel about her. And I feel like that touches too, again, on cancel culture. Like, what is too far for somebody to be canceled? You could say like Shia LaBeouf, who's been canceled for like a lot of his behaviors, or Mark Wahlberg is trying to be canceled, and Eminem. So then I'm like, where do we draw the line? When is it? When are we canceling somebody? Like, I would say somebody like Harvey Weinstein. Yes, let's cancel him. Kevin Spacey. Yes, let's cancel him. And then where is it like, and maybe I don't know enough information about certain people and why they're being canceled.
Yeah, and it does make it difficult. I mean, honestly, that could be the next season of American Horror Story right there. Cancel culture. I mean, so many ideas brewing in my head. Hey, if anyone's listening and you're looking for a couple of writers for the next season, look no further. But in all seriousness, I mean, that could be a really great season. I don't know. And the thing is too, I think that this season was just so far off and out there for me and my preferences that the only one I related to in the whole season was the raccoon. I mean, just, it was...
Yes, a lot of unlikable characters that didn't pull us through. And I was wondering, like, did the writers and actors strike impact them? And then I was thinking, how does that impact the story? I look at Chucky, and I know you're not caught up on Chucky.
Yeah, I still need to.
The writer of Chucky had his season planned out. So yes, the strike impacted him, but that didn't impact the story. It just impacted how the story production was delivered.
Yeah.
And so when people say, well, the strike impacted our season and that's why the story isn't good, I'm like, didn't you have the story written before you started this season?
Yeah. I mean,
I don't know, anybody in Hollywood, let us know.
Like, hey, we'd love to be more educated on this. Like, we're very well versed in thanatology and grief and loss and kind of horror genre type things in general. But if you have more insights into this, it's all about learning and growing and understanding things better. So please let us know. Margaret, do you feel like you were able to relate to anyone in the season?
I'm with you. I'll be the raccoon. I mean, I liked some of the characters, but then the way they just like switched them and twisted them. Yeah. So even if I did relate, I'm like, well, now I don't like this character. Now this is.
It was just too much. Yeah. I kind of feel like, and when you look at the raccoon, it's this character that's kind of fallen by the wayside, and someone picks it up and tries to nurture it, right? So that's a positive. I mean, even though it was dead, but you know what I mean. Like, at least there are still caring people, no matter how desperate a situation may seem. So that's a nice takeaway from the season. But yes, we need some more stuff that's a little bit better. Okay, since we have no relatable characters, if you could design your dream season of American Horror Story, what would it center around, and who would you absolutely have to have in it?
Oh my gosh, that is a great question. Oh, I think we have to bring back Evan Peters because he's classic. And oh my gosh, the girl whose sister's in all the Conjuring movies, whose name I can't think of, who was in the beginning and in Coven. I think we have to bring her back.
Yeah, the Farmiglia girl. Vera's
Yes.
little sister. Yeah.
Yes.
Gosh, I'm so sorry. The Sicilian in me just jumped out for a minute. Yeah, she's in there. So definitely Evan and Vera. I'm just going to say Vera's sister. So sorry. Apologies that your name has escaped us.
Yes. Maybe some of the kids from like Reservation Dogs, those, I guess they're not kids, those actors. I would love to have them involved. Who else? You know, I love the Ghost Brothers. Maybe they could act in my season just because they're, I don't know. Okay, I digress. My season, I think I would want to touch on some sort of folk horror theme that could be able to tie into previous seasons. Yeah. So how about you?
I'm with you right there on the folk tales, especially there are so many folk tales throughout the United States that it could be a lot of fun. I feel like Evan Peters would need to come back. I need Angela Bassett back. I need her in my life. I would want, because I know that she is, and maybe not an option, but some sort of tribute to Jessica Lange would be great. Somehow like connecting a character who honors and bonds like a previous character of hers or something of that nature. I would say Gabby, but she recently just had babies, so I know she's busy with that, but maybe the following season. And also I'm gonna need my girl Kathy Bates to come back too. Like, I want all the originals to come back, because I think that would be just super awesome and a lot of fun.
That would be great. I would, all the originals, and then we've got like a ghost hunting theme, so the Ghost Brothers can come in, and then we've got the Reservation Dog kids, so maybe some indigenous folk lore going on there, so that we could have like this beautiful ensemble that just has, yes.
I'm just totally nerding out, and if I see this on next season, we will know where everyone got it from. Just that.
Yes.
Okay, so a group of people end up like going on a healing retreat, like a la that show Melissa McCarthy was in. And it's like on or near the res. So it's some sort of sponsored program. And people like begin having like supernatural strange occurrences, or they already have, and then they start hearing folk tales and learning more and heightening their cultural awareness, and then they go back to like their normal everyday lives, and then there's like something bigger picture in the whole thing. I think that would be really cool. I think it would be a really wonderful way to educate persons who are non-Indigenous living in the United States as well, because that is certainly something that I believe is lacking in our schools, in our society, in our culture as a whole. And I think that would be really wonderful as well if it is done respectfully and thoughtfully.
Yes, I agree. Like if they could, like, I know you haven't seen this film yet, La Llorona, which is the Guatemalan version, which
The
it brings
the
in
crying
the
bride, right?
yeah, it
Yeah.
brings in her, but it's actually that could also play into revenge
Mhm.
horror because it's pulling in her folklore and then how that impacts the
Mhm.
genocide that happened in Guatemala against the Mayan people. I didn't realize. So again,
Oh.
as Anna's touching on our lack of education here in the
Mhm.
United States, I didn't know starting in like, I think it was like 74, 84, Guatemala for like 10, 20 years
Yep.
genocided the Mayan people. And this film is talking about that and the horrors that like
Mhm.
people just missing. Like in
Yes.
this movie, people are just holding flyers of their missing loved ones.
Mhm.
And oh, I'm getting chills talking about this movie. It'd be great if more of our media touched on these
Mhm.
folk tales and how they could bring awareness. And yeah,
Absolutely.
so
Yeah.
and listeners, if you haven't seen La Llorona, the Guatemalan version,
Mhm.
whew, it is beautifully done, and it's sad. Like it's
Mhm. Absolutely. And I think you're right. I mean, most of these folk tales were created because of what was going on in a society or community, or they're interrelated to that. And a lot of the time people forget those things. Um, and I think that's really important to have a cultural appreciation for the origin of the tales as well. And I think it's
yeah,
really important to have respect too. And I think each culture within the United States and subculture and group, we all have our own folklore that gets passed down. There are certain things you talk about, certain things you don't. And it's really important for the media and society, even influencers, to understand and respect that. Because what you may have heard and you think is a cool concept or story or idea may have originated within my culture and be very taboo to me.
mm-hmm.
And I think there's a lot of unrecognized creations and characters and tales, and what they mean.
Yes, I agree. And how do we bring this cultural sensitivity? And even
Mm-hmm.
as Anna and I, as thanatologists, I think we both have this admiration and love for like other cultures' death customs, which is just
Mm-hmm.
so beautiful. And then in horror, horror can be a
Yeah.
great way to illuminate and to bring
Oh, yeah.
awareness into other cultures, like Japanese film that have a lot of ghost lore, because
Mm-hmm.
that's part of in their death culture that I find beautiful and I wish we would have
Mm-hmm.
more of. Side note, Uma is an American film and I can't remember. I know that she's Asian, but it touches on, I want to say she might be Korean American, some death cultures after or death customs after her mom dies and she
Mm-hmm.
gets her ashes, which is a beautiful movie to watch. And
Oh,
I'm sorry to the creators and the culture of that movie if I got the culture wrong. It's been a while since I've seen it.
yeah. But it's, I think by learning about, other cultures, even learning more about our own and our history, it's really important to, appreciate. Like, I'm not going to understand you and your life and your experiences, but I can appreciate it. And I think people really tend to forget that, just because you don't understand someone, you haven't walked in their shoes, doesn't mean you're unable to hear them out, listen to their stories, their experiences, and gain an appreciation for them and what they've been through.
Yes, I agree. We need more diversity in our media.
Yes, absolutely. So that is our order. It is a little bit of a tall one, but if if American Horror Story next season could do at least a couple of the things that we've mentioned, that would be super
Yes,
awesome. But
yes.
all in all, if you haven't seen the season, I don't know if I'd recommend this one, to be honest. What about you, Margaret?
No, yeah. No,
Yeah.
it's a pass for me. You don't have to watch it unless you're a huge like hardcore fan and you just want to watch it.
Mm-hmm.
Go for it.
Yeah. But I will say, if you haven't seen the previous season, which was the New York season, so throughout our grad program, Margaret and I both, we did a lot of studies on the HIV and AIDS crisis of the 1980s. And I know for me, it really connected to me and touched my heart. So that season was just kind of like a love letter through the lens of horror to that era. I don't know. What are your feelings on that?
I think, and I know we discussed that season before, that it was a little confusing in parts, but I still really appreciated that they were bringing awareness to the AIDS epidemic, how that impacted communities, and how those communities just, they didn't get the attention, the support that they needed.
Right. Absolutely. Well, and even like, you know, and I keep going back to Coven, but if you look at Coven, right, they go all the way back to Salem. And I'm a little bit of a Salem fanatic here, but you know, so often we see movies or we hear stories and no one ever mentions like Tituba, but she was such a strong part of what happened during the mass hysteria and such a source of blame. And I think that mentioning her and showing, you know, the relationship between like quote unquote the voodoo witches and then the other witches and how that happened and where it was today and what they're doing. And eventually, like, as the seasons go on, they have to find a way to work together and realize like we have to come together now. And it was really beautiful to watch that. And even like the Freak Show season, yes, historically there were sideshows. Historically, these things were going on. And these are groups of people that were oppressed because of these reasons. And you could watch an episode of one of those seasons and learn something historically that may incite you to research. I mean, even if we look at Asylum, that asylum was based on a real place, and it's just so lacking in the newer seasons. I obviously, listeners, I'm very disappointed with the more recent season. I could go on and on about that, but I digress.
It happens. We just get passionate and
yeah. But hey, I mean, look at it this way. These are like seasons of our lives, right? Some seasons are really, really great and we learn and bond and discover new things, and other seasons coast along. And then we have the seasons that don't go exactly as hoped for or planned. But the main thing is just keep going.
Yes. Yep. The season's going to pass. There'll be a better season, maybe a worse season, but it's not going to be here forever.
Exactly. Yes. Very cool. Well, until next time, let us know which season of American Horror Story is your favorite and your least favorite. And hey, if you feel differently than us, please tell us why. We would love to know. Any insights would be great. And until next time, close those coffin lids and save some Bruja Brew for our next cast. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening.